Hello, my customer success friends. Irit Eizips here for CSM Practice, your go-to podcast for cutting churn, boosting revenue, and taking your customer success strategy to the next level. And today I'm joined by Daniel Oberes, Head of Operations at Snappr. He's going to share how Snappr has redefined their customer success strategy by streamlining processes and implementing high impact tools that drive faster results and stronger customer relationships. And in fact, whatever he's done, which we're going to unfold today, has increased their CSAT scores from
3.9 to 4.6.
I think you're going to learn a thing or two from listening to Daniel's experience and what they've done at Snappr, and maybe take some of those tactics to your place of work. And this is what this podcast is all about: tactical advice and getting you inspired to be better and do better for your business. Daniel, thank you so much for coming to the show.
Hey, Irit. Thanks for having me.
Well, Daniel and I go way, way, way back, and my firm was relatively young. I think I started it in 2014. Daniel actually helped me with a couple of projects, and he used to be one of my very esteemed colleagues doing great work for our clients. So, Daniel, thank you so much for being part of my journey.
Yeah, it's always been fun.
And you have a very impressive career, by the way. 20 years in customer success and operations. You worked at BlackBerry and you helped them move their hardware business to SaaS. You worked with People.ai, ClickUp, transforming their go-to-market motion upmarket. And now you're the executive leading sales services and support functions at Snappr.
Thanks, Irit. I think if you want to put a couple little milestones in there, in the way that I think about it, I feel like I like being part of transformations. So you saw things around go-to-market transformation or moving from hardware to SaaS. And I feel like I've been lucky to be in the customer success space because I feel like the sales motion has typically been the sales motion. But with the transition to SaaS, go-to-market and engagement models and all that changed. So sometimes the feeling is that customer success or customer experience is kind of second fiddle to sales, but I think where a lot of innovation is happening is customer experience. So I feel like I've been on the edge of things for a while, and you and I have been working on helping mature businesses. So yeah, I feel lucky that I've been able to help businesses transform.
Yeah, not to digress too much, but I think with the introduction of Gen AI and all these tools that are coming into the market, I feel like the one thing that's going to tremendously be impacted is the customer experience and the way we approach overall the engagement models. But I want to talk about things at Snappr and what helped you go from an okay CSAT to a much higher customer satisfaction. So let's start with just sharing, how big is your team at the moment? Do you even have a customer success team at Snappr?
I have about 150 people in my organization. I don't own the account management or AM team. So I own the services and delivery side. And so the transactions on the enterprise side roll up to a different leader. So I'm kind of more on the execution and services end. I do have a sales function, but it's mostly inbound. But I think it's kind of a more traditional old school model where you have people that own sales and then you have service delivery. So when I joined Snappr, so just to add some context, Snappr is a Uber for photography. We started out as a consumer business, and the model of having an algorithm, a matchmaking service. So you have to create a supply. Eventually, we went into a world of enterprise. So we have a lot of customers or businesses out there that need high run rate monthly photography. So things like car dealerships, real estate, basically marketplaces. Those became our bread and butter. We haven't let go of the consumer side of the house because I think in a lot of cases, when you go down market, they're not ready for a contract, so they come in through the consumer side. So it's a profitable end of the business. You put $1 in, you get $1.50 out. So let's keep it running. And we subsidize the growth of other portions of our business, including enterprise and AI. When I first joined, I was head of customer operations. So that's my background. So the teams I managed were an inbound sales team, support team, or a customer success team, so enterprise and consumer, and then what they called a learning and development team. So the learning and development team is kind of the enablement team for both of those functions. It's different from enablement, or it's similar to what we would call enablement in like a B2B space, but heavily oriented around compliance against our processes. So when I joined the team, we had pretty consistent performance, but lower than I would like it to be. So steady as she goes, but underperforming in a lot of ways. Not to say that it wasn't good work being done, but they brought me on to help kind of take it to the next level. What I found was lots of structural issues that were getting in the way. So we had 3.9 of customer satisfaction, but we had a lot of things that told us that we were doing a good job. Like our average resolution time, our responsiveness was super high. Our refund rate was pretty low.
If everything is hunky-dory, just the CSAT score is a little low. Couldn't it be just like the end users or the one that are responding are a little bit harsh on their rating? Like, it's just like they don't want to give a 5 unless it's like some people are like, oh, 5, that me riding an elephant, something like extraordinary like that.
The angle that I was coming from is repeat business. And if you're not an enthusiastic customer, you're not going to come back. And the angle that I was coming from is like, especially for trying to get up market and get SMB and mid market, go up market, we need to be deserving of more. So I took it as a signal, not necessarily as the ultimate goal, but having good customer satisfaction is good for business. Then you get good ratings, and then your ratings go up, and then you go up in the ranks, and more business comes in. So it's a virtuous cycle. That was kind of the theory behind it. And I just believe that a good customer experience is also good for the team when they feel like they're actually helping their customers and the customers are happy. And I also felt like it wasn't the sense of winning and pride in the team that I think they deserved. You have people that are doing what they have been asked and they're hitting numbers, but they weren't also feeling proud about it. And so the internal lack of kind of pride and the external kind of middling performance told me like something was off. So you do the normal things and you kind of like, okay, are we responsive enough and all of that kind of stuff. And you investigate process. And I found that that was more of a distraction. I found that it was just kind of org design that was getting in the way. So we had weird incentives. We had weird incentives around average resolution time. Isn't that great? Like we have customers that were resolving quickly. We did some unnatural things, like we would take like a ticket and we would break it up into a million different pieces and we would close all those pieces. I'm like, oh no. And I was like, oh, okay, I get it. I see what's happening. We would have a lot of responsiveness, but like the long tail, the things that we didn't respond to was too big. So not to say that the team wasn't doing well and what they were asked for, but like the incentive structure created weird tensions and the leaders didn't have a finger on the pulse about what they're doing with the process to like actually tell them like, okay, this is what customer experience should be. So it was very metrics oriented, but there's no kind of philosophy or vision around customer experience. So I'm like, oh, okay, I need to help them. I need to help them understand what the vision is, what they're going to feel, and what the customers are going to feel. At the end of the day, you're going to help them and they're going to be happy, and then you're going to be proud of your work. And you're not going to do unnatural things, and you're just going to do the work. People were worried. They're like, oh, you're going to change our incentives, and all of our numbers and baselines and metrics were based on these, in my mind, relatively artificial numbers. But I'm like, that's okay. We're going to see our numbers go down. You're not going to look as productive. Our resolution times are going to go like this. And that's all right. So I had to kind of coach them through a transformation, and the business too. They're very uncomfortable with like, our resolution times are skyrocketing. The story I had to tell them was like, these are the actual natural places it should be. We were telling ourselves stories. I had to create an incentive structure that would allow for it to happen. I had to create a process in which they could consume all of it, and they had to change performance metrics. And then we had other weird collisions, like I didn't have enough capacity for some portions of the business. And it's because we had an org structure that had consumer versus workflows or enterprise. And so like then I was like, okay, if I want to move in this direction, I don't have enough capacity. And we have some relatively artificial specialization because we wanted to have management structures that allowed us to hold power in one person versus another. Why do we need that? We had to like kind of unpack a lot of org design stuff. And I found that my tendency as an operations person was going to be like, I'm going to dig into process and clean it up there. But that was the icing on the cake. That was like the easiest part. And I had to like kind of fill in the strategy and the kind of design goal of customer experience and redesign the structure of the team. From the outside, it doesn't look like anything is different, except when you go through our flow, It's very natural. The words I would use is like, we're doing unnatural things and we're not helping our customers. Basically, I just did what was, you could describe as common sense, but like we had a lot of impediments, like again, incentives, org structure.
Okay, so it sounds like the way you solved for it essentially is that you reintroduced different incentives. You're essentially trying to change the behavior so that instead of trying to unnaturally showcase as if they resolved the tickets quickly, they allowed for a better customer experience and resolved the ticket in the natural pace or the fastest way that it was supposed to naturally be resolved without having to catenate the ticket into multiple ones, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, that one example, right? There's other things that we did, but I felt like that was like the big cut. That was like a big lever. Other things we needed to do were like, do we have enough supply? The Uber of photography. Do we have the right folks doing the right jobs? And I found that our algorithm wasn't necessarily optimizing for what I would call reliability or professionalism. It was going for quality of image making, but not necessarily reliability. So we had, imagine you're calling an Uber and it doesn't show up. I'm like, I'm not using the service anymore. I had to make a big turn around, like, all right, it's kind of uncomfortable, but we need to kind of make sure that we're a reliable service. So I started kind of suspending some of our long-term photographers, or like letting them know, like, you have to be reliable to be a part of our system. It was all very much upstream of the actual process itself.
Danielle, how did you find out what was bothering the customers? Because I imagine you didn't just assume that they didn't like to have their ticket broken down to multiple ones, or that the algorithm wasn't producing the type of results that they wanted or the type of work that ended up being. What did you do first? I mean, you noticed that there was unhappiness or dissatisfaction from something, but how did you figure out like what to do? Because I would just assume if I had an executive come in and try changing the world for something that seemingly works, I would push back unless you're going to show me that what you're saying is grounded not just in your opinion and hunch and gut feeling.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, we're talking about changing comp plans and processes and algorithms.
Those are big swings. It took a little while to win those fights.
What was the secret sauce? How does Daniel brain operates? You know you're going to have some pushback. So, what's on your mind as you prepare for that winning of the minds and hearts of everybody else's minds? How are you approaching it before you even have that first conversation of, hey, we need to change something?
There's my brain going top down, and I would have hunches, because I would just try to like see again from the perspective of a customer what's happening, and I would go through the strategy consultant type person. Like, you go in and I'm going to do a SIPOC, and I'm going to go through where the ins and outs are. So I had to create a map for myself, the normal thing, and I'll be like, oh, that doesn't make sense, and that's colliding. But that was me just learning vocabulary of Snappr. And once I learned the vocabulary of Snappr, what I did was just I started just talking to the team. And what I found was, when I asked a question and I had a hypothesis, they validated I wouldn't lead. And basically the team told me what the problems were. The team told me where all the friction was, because there was all these handoffs. And I was like, oh, that doesn't make sense. So my approach was just normal consulting work of like interviewing, asking, getting the requirements together. And then like, okay, this is the cohesive thing. This is why when you adjust this number goes down, and vice versa, or whatever. I'm like, okay. So I did a gap analysis basically, which is a very simple tool. Everyone knows how to do it or whatever. It's not an uncommon tool. Then what I could do is, because like there's like 150 people out there, how do you rally around this? Because I can't change all of that stuff at once. I think if there was a tool that I used to sell it, at least internally and with my team, was like, okay, this is the path that we're going to be on. And I'm thinking like, I think in like 3 quarters time, if they think everything's going to get done in a quarter or whatever, like Daniel says this is going to happen, people get burnt out or freaked out, or like, is it happening? Or we've tried to do it before. All of those objections. I had my background in sales, right? Like, I was a sales engineer. I know how to kind of sell the mission a little bit, but basically it was the case of like, hey, in Q1, we're going to do this, and we're going to see these changes, and you're going to feel like this, and our stakeholders are going to feel like this. Do we agree? And it was very much like, because some folks get the milestones, and then some folks get the metrics, and then some folks get feelings. So I needed to make sure that like all of those things basically lined up, because What happens is the natural human thing of like, we poke around, we see what things are like, and not everyone's speaking the same language. And some people will speak milestones, some people will speak metrics, some people will speak feelings. So I just put it out there. These are the numbers, these are the milestones, these are the feelings. Are we here? And so, like, no matter what was happening, basically people were speaking this. They knew how to triangulate. I'm like, oh, okay, this person's talking feelings and this person's understanding metrics. And they're like, okay, that's where we should be in Q2. That's about right. So the vision was actually easier to sell because everyone knew like, okay, customer experience makes sense. And here's the path to it. And we're like, okay, that basically makes sense. But like, when is it going to happen? Can Daniel actually execute? That became more of the test. Is this sound thinking? Can he execute? That became like the daily struggle of execution. Like any good work becomes an execution thing. Because I had like a 3/4 map in my mind, kind of on paper, I could personally weather the storm of things going sideways and be like, I launched it and the numbers went sideways and they went further than these other metrics went way off. I'm like, oh no, you know? I think the fortitude that you get from long-term planning is probably the thing that held me steady.
I'm listening to you speak, and one thing taken me aback when you said, well, everybody knows how to do a gap analysis. I don't think that's true. Not only that, so all executives, especially of customer success, needs to learn how to do it. And you're right, it's so simple, yet so few know how to do it and how to do it properly. I don't think enough people understand the strength in planning out for a longer process to just gives you enough time to handle any curveballs that you're going to handle, because nobody gets it right the first time around. I remember is like a week ago, I had a call with customer success executives. She's been in the trenches for years and she just joined a very large company for the first time. So she worked with startups and scale ups, and she got her break and she got to work for a public company, but it's a very traditional company. They never had customer success. And the head honcho says, I want to see your blueprint, your roadmap. Like, what's your timeline with all the milestones and what you're going to do in 4 weeks after she started the job. And I was like, when do you get to have time to do a gap analysis? She's like, no, he wants it now, like next week. That was like a few weeks after she started. I'm like, there's no way. And it's not the correct way. And I feel like because they don't know how the importance of doing a gap analysis, they don't even push back with conviction to say, no, I need 90 days to do. That's more or less how long it takes to just gather all the facts and talk to everybody important and then put it all together and think through this so it's reasonable. You got the emotions, the facts, the KPIs, the plan. Like, it takes time. You need to think. We're not robots, we're not ChatGPT. Put it all together, do a road show, see what people think about it, get some feedback.
I think people think it's just an input to a project plan.
It's the process that helps you think about what is the right approach and what is the right next thing for this company that will make a difference and take us to the next level. You only have a few bets you can place as an executive. When did you join, by the way? Was this your first project after joining this company?
It was a long-term project. There's other things I did. It became the mission that carried through. I definitely got pushback from leadership. They're like, that looks a little frameworky. I'm like, yeah, yeah, it is. It is frameworky. Yeah, totally. It could be double-edged sword or whatever, or like people could react to it. And like, there's temperament. There's like very like execution, bias towards action folks. And then I'm a slow and smooth is fast, a speed to outcome type person. So I had to like figure out how to sell this to the bias towards action person, where their time horizon is like this and mine's like this. That was always the job of selling.
Do you feel like one thing that you could do if you know that there's like something transformational you want to do for a company you just joined? It's going to take some time, but you get a push to like a real pressure to deliver some quick wins.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There are other portions of the business where I needed to kind of build the credit. So I did some other non transformational things. I was like, all right, for sales, we're going to do the basics. I'm not asking for a big transformation. I'm just saying, these are the metrics we're going to do, and this is how we're going to kind of capture it. I basically did the basics with the sales team, and then we hit record numbers. So I was like, I kind of showed, hey, I'm not just kind of fancy long-term planning, strategic visionary guy. I'm also get in the weeds, understand the day-to-day, inspect, and move on. Once we got some record performance, that was kind of the undercurrent. I'm like, okay, let me use that credit to do the long-term thing. You had to sell. There's definitely times where like, oh, no one's buying it. There's no one's buying it. Like I gotta push on through. But again, that's the job of selling.
No, that comes with experience and some gray hair. I think as soon as you get enough gray hair, that I don't have some too many F's to give, my truth will hold, comes into mind. And you already proved yourself. You have a lot of success behind you, and you just care a little less about what people think and care a little bit more about what's right.
Yeah, it gets to the point where you're just like, I'm not asking for permission. You know what I mean? It's just uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable for you, but we'll get there. I really love your story, and I hope that anybody that's just recently become a customer success executive or had been working as a CS exec and recently got into a job and they're trying to navigate between being transformational and doing what's right for the company to creating momentum and getting the executives to feel like they can trust them. Understand this: there's quick wins, and then there's the transformational project. For the transformational project, you'll need to have a gap analysis and a lot of wind behind your sail. You have to have longevity, grit, determination, and patience. And you have to think ahead of time. I think one of your KPIs was CSAT, very simple. What are your success indicators? How are you going to track success? And be okay with it going sideways and prepare people in advance that this might happen. That's why we're going to start small and go big eventually. So plan for risk ahead of time. All the while, when you get that new job, you get that you're working on this big transformational project, always think about what are your first quick wins in your first 90 days. As you're interviewing, interview for that. Figure it out as you go along, because once you're there, you need to hit the ground running and show something to quickly change. That's probably not a big deal. You don't want to necessarily start with a transformational thing, but you kind of want to do that in parallel as you're creating trust and build trust internally and with clients.
Yeah, it worked out. Eventually, I got promoted to take on the rest of operations function. And yeah, it was a good run.
That's amazing. I'm not surprised. This is not the first time Daniel takes on a job and gets promoted. I think he did that the same thing at People AI.
I started out as CSM, so I carried it back. Before that, I was over at BlackBerry doing customer success operations, hundreds of millions in revenue. And then I went to this little startup that's trying to make their first million. I was betting on the business and betting on me to figure out like, how do I build up that business so it deserves an operations person like me? And then eventually I was like, all right, we're ready for someone like me now. Built that up.
Daniel, thank you so much. What an inspirational conversation. I always love talking to you, and I think we're not talking as often as we should, but this was such a great excuse to catch up. And what a great story. I hope we got a few of you inspired. If you did, please give this video a like, reach out to Daniel, give him a big virtual hug. He's amazing. Comment below what did you love the most about this video, and yeah, subscribe to our channel. I'll see you all at the next video.